Good morning. I'm Lolly Burns, and I am serving as the junior warden for the past 2 years here, and that doesn't qualify me to preach, but Father John asked me if I would share a few words today in his absence, so here I go. One of my very favorite Bible verses is this one right here. It says, it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. And it says, the paraphrase that I like the best says, "As your servant, O Christ, and a steward of your possessions, may I be found faithful." For a little background, I was born into a home with Christian parents and lived in the little town of Primera, just west of here. Husband, who was a Baptist, and happily joined the Baptist church. And we spent the first 37 years of our marriage in the Baptist church. And then about 11 years ago, a set of circumstances brought us to St. Albans. That was a big surprise, but it's a story for another time. So we've been very happy at St. Albans for the past 11 years. So just suffice it to say, I've been in church all my life, okay? But without a doubt, what I learned, the people who worked on his farm for him, I observed him loaning things to people in the community of Primera and Harlingen, and I saw him offer wise counsel and friendship and kindness throughout his whole life. Daddy lived to be almost 92 years old, but at age 88, he suffered a stroke as he was bringing in firewood one cold December night, and from then on, he was infirmed and couldn't do anything much but inspire. And actually, the last check he ever wrote was on his kitchen table that night, and it was made out to the Salvation Army. Truly, he was a faithful servant of Christ and in the stewardship of Christ's possessions. So here's a little bit about me and my husband, Ricky, and our lives. We just celebrated our 48th anniversary. Ricky was also raised by Christian parents, and we're both from farming backgrounds. A little over 31 years ago, my husband encouraged me to go into real estate, and I got my license in 1992. It's been a great career for me, and Ricky took that cue because I could just strike up a conversation with a fence post, and he thought that would be a good way to cash in on that particular trait that I have. And he was right. He was right. It's been good. But so he's a farmer, I'm a realtor, and that means no steady paychecks. And that means no sick pay and no paid vacations for sure. And it means no retirement or insurance unless you're very, very disciplined to do that kind of thing. So that kind of life can be very rewarding, but it can be also very scary. And one time in particular, I want to tell you about that will forever stick in my memory. Wait a minute, I just got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. So this life can be very scary, but it can be very rewarding. And it's a big gamble. And that's why we don't buy lottery tickets or go to Vegas. We don't need any more excitement like that in our lives. Every time I close on a piece of property, the first check I write is my tithe check. And it's not a chore, it's a joy because I got paid. I got a check. I'm excited about that. So I have no problem writing a tithe check. It's my practice to write the check before I pay for or purchase anything else each time I make a commission, because going 6 weeks to 3 months between commission checks can keep you very humble. I realize that every single dollar Ricky and I earn is only because of God's goodness, grace, and mercy. Without our health, none of it would be possible. Without his guidance as to our decision-making, it wouldn't be possible. As your servants, O Christ, and stewards of your possessions, may we be found faithful. Let me share with you about 1 year on the farm that will forever stand out in my memory. And if any of y'all are involved or were involved in agriculture back in 1995, you'll remember it too. In the spring of that year, we had an armyworm infestation of our cotton crop. I'd never even heard of an armyworm before, but we'll never forget that term now. It was literally like kind of a 2 or 3 day thing, like a biblical thing. Just a swarm of armyworms just wiped out our entire crop. And so this is the way farmers operate. We don't make monthly payments on things. We make annual payments. So we buy a cotton picker, we make an annual payment on that cotton picker or a combine or any of the other things we do. And we also have a fun little crop note that we take out from the bank every year. And we borrow from that crop note all year to put in our crop. And then at the end, we pay it out. That is if you make a crop. After you pick your cotton and your corn and your grain and all that, and you get settled up, then you have all these payments to make. Well, those payments are usually scheduled for like September, October, or later after we've gotten all settled up. And so that year, this cotton crop was wiped out in May. It was wiped out. And I just had a meltdown. I thought, how in the world are we ever going to make our payments? Where's that money going to come from? So I really freaked out about it. And I just want y'all to know that I distinctly heard, not audibly, but in my spirit, I heard God say, Lolly, don't you remember how I took care of the children of Israel? I provided for them on a daily basis. I gave them manna and quail on a daily basis, and I can provide for you too. Remember that he provided that manna and quail to the children of Israel, and it kept them humble and it kept them dependent on him. They couldn't gather more than they could eat for one day, or it would go bad. Well, you know what? I don't even remember how he provided for us that year. I don't remember how we made those payments, but we did. We made all those payments and we didn't go broke and we didn't starve. And it was a very, very good lesson for me to learn. I've never forgotten it. That doesn't mean that I haven't freaked out again, though. The most stressful years of my life to this point have been, I would say, from like 2000 to 2011, when my parents were older and infirmed. My mama had to go on dialysis in 2005 due to an autoimmune disease, and she passed away in 2010. And Daddy had his stroke in 2007, and until his death in 2011 required 24-hour care. I was responsible for overseeing their care and finances. And anyone who's been in this situation knows how costly the 24-hour-a-day care can be. And I just watched their cash just steadily go down for 4 years. It was scary. And again, I would have moments where I would just become very anxious and very worried, even though I knew that Daddy had been so faithful his entire life that God would take care of it. And then I'd feel guilty that I was freaking out. So then things would rock along, the money would go down more and more and more, and I'd have another crisis of faith. And then I'd feel guilty, and it was just one of those, circles that was bad. But anyway, I want you to know that when Daddy died, there was $30,000 left, and that's it. And 10 of that went to pay for his funeral. And God taught me again, he takes care of us. He doesn't give us more than we need, but he takes care of us. He will always do that. So let's say I've got this whole tithes and offerings things down, right? Because a tithe is 10%. That's what I believe. The Bible says that a tithe is 10%, and an offering is anything that you give above and beyond your tithe. So I've got that whole thing down because of my faith and my background, and I don't have a problem with that, and I can do it. So anyway, does God really need my tithe check? Can he operate without my tithe check? Absolutely. He really doesn't need my tithes and my offerings. In the book of Psalms, chapter 50, verses 7 through 11, we read, I am God, your God. I do not rebuke you for your sacrifices or your burnt offerings, which are ever before me. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens. For every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the creatures of the field are mine. These beautiful yet stern words help me to not become puffed up about my giving. After all, he does own the cattle on 1,000 hills. Everything is his. God can accomplish his plans on this earth without my measly little tithes and offerings. In the Bible, we are commanded to give because in doing so, we learn to rely on him and be faithful. Tithing shows that we put our love for God before our love for money. Tithing grows our trust in God. I know it does for me anyway. If you're new to the idea of giving part of your income, I urge you to try it. Start small and see if God is trustworthy. Here's a great verse to ponder as you consider a new practice of giving. It's found in Luke 6:38. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. I can personally testify that I have never, ever needed the tithes and offerings I gave away at a later date. Not once have I ever said, oh, if I just hadn't written that tithe check, I'd have enough money to pay this bill. It just doesn't happen that way. Learning a new practice of giving is hard, though, especially if you didn't see it modeled as you grew up, like I did. You could begin this journey by using 1 Corinthians 4, 1 through 2 as a prayer. As your servant, O Christ, and a steward of your possessions, may I be found faithful. In closing, I'd like to say what a privilege it has been to serve as St. Alban's junior warden. The verse I have emphasized today is a good job description of a junior warden's duties, because it involves overseeing the maintenance and improvements of the buildings and grounds of St. Alban's. It's a joy to see how our church body has been so faithful in its giving that in the past 2 years, we've replaced air conditioning units, roofs, improved parking lots, installed sidewalks, and many, many other projects without having to dip into our savings. We have been able to fund all these repairs and improvements because of faithful giving. We are stewards of his possessions, not ours. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this morning. And in closing, would you please repeat today's verse with me? As your servant, O Christ, and a steward of your possessions, may I be found faithful. Thank you.